Hello and welcome back to Autistic After Hours. I'm your host Ashra, and today I wanted to talk about the subject of being alone versus being lonely and how I learned later in life that those two things are not necessarily the same thing. Being alone and being lonely, you can be one and not the other, and it's been a process of teaching that to myself and unlearning things that society has forced into my mind. But before we get into all of that, quick reminder to follow Autistic After Hours on Instagram. I post original content on there every single week, and your support means a lot. Also, a reminder to please consider following or subscribing wherever you're listening right now, whether that is on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. I wanted to talk about this because I noticed a really big shift in myself from when I was younger to when I was an adult, where when I was little, I wanted to be alone a lot. Like most of the time, I wanted to be alone, and I was really happy in my aloneness, in my solitude. And then as I got older, I realized that I felt this need to constantly be around other people or be on the phone with people or be talking to people. I felt like really ashamed if I was alone. I felt like somewhat of a social outcast if I didn't have a lot of social stuff going on. And this really wasn't because of my own feelings of wanting to be around other people. It was more so because of messages that I was receiving from society and from the people around me. And I wanted to talk more about that today and how I realized that being alone doesn't necessarily mean being lonely, and how I have figured out the difference for myself and how those things feel different and how to identify what I'm feeling. I want to start from when I was younger. So I think this is common for autistic people, but of course it is not something that all autistic people experience. But I think a lot of autistic people have a need for a lot of alone time. And again, not all autistic people. There are many autistic people that are highly extroverted, that become charged from being around other people, and they want to always be around other people, and they might be very outgoing, very extroverted. Like, that's totally possible, and this is not at all meant to invalidate that if that is your experience. But for myself, and anecdotally, it seems common that autistic people sometimes have a propensity toward needing alone time to recharge, needing time away from other humans to kind of process and regroup and avoid burnout. This is something that was really natural for me. As a kid, I wanted to be alone a lot. Any chance that I could be alone, I would be alone. I didn't really like leaving the house. I didn't naturally seek out hanging out with other children. If I had play dates, it was because my mom arranged it. I didn't really seek that out myself. When I was able to be alone, I really wanted to be alone. I didn't really want to play with other people. If I did, it was adults, and it would be that I wanted to pretend that I was teaching them. I had a special interest in becoming a teacher one day. So if I ever wanted to play with other people, it would be a very specific type of play, and it would be with an adult, and it would be that I would want to essentially reenact what I was doing in school with them. So I would be the teacher, they would be the student, and I would essentially just completely regurgitate what my teacher did with me. Like, just the roles reversed. I would be the teacher, and I would teach the person that I was playing with, like the adult who was pretending to be a student. I would teach them what I was learning in school. That was pretty much the way that I liked to play, and it was definitely a unique form of play. But that is what I liked doing. And if I wasn't doing that, I would want to be alone, like reorganizing my playroom, which was, again, like just a replica of my classroom. I tried to copy my teacher all the time. I wanted to be my teacher. I wanted to be a teacher really bad. I had a special interest in it. My entire playroom was set up as a classroom. I would basically just spend all of my alone time organizing it and setting things up and just being a teacher, role-playing as my teacher, basically. And it was really natural for me to want this alone time. It was not forced. It was something that I chose, and the people in my life granted that to me. Like, my mom never really forced me to not be alone. She never really forced me to be more social than I wanted to be. Sometimes she would set up play dates for me, but it was on my own terms. Like, if I really said like, no, I don't want to do that, like, she never forced me to do anything, and I really appreciate that looking back. But I rarely had play dates, and if I did, it was like I had like maybe one friend and maybe two, I don't know, maybe one or two friends at that point in my life when I was little, and that's how I liked it. I just really liked being alone. It was natural for me. I didn't see any problem with it, and I sought it out all the time. I loved being alone. I loved having quiet time, space from other people to think, to process, to regulate myself. I had a really exciting and fun inner world, and I loved existing within it as much as I could. And I didn't like being interrupted. I liked being alone with myself. As I got older, though, things really shifted because I started to receive messages from society and from people around me that my aloneness was something bad. It was signs that there was something wrong. And I never felt this way, but this was the types of message that I was receiving. People kind of making it seem like it was a sign of your performance socially if you were alone a lot versus if you had a lot of friends and had a lot of social things going on. I started to realize that popularity was a really important part of social performance, and I realized that if I wanted to be accepted, I needed to be more social. And I realized that the people that I saw were alone a lot were people that seemed like they were social outcasts. And those people were sometimes made fun of, and I didn't want to be made fun of. And so I forced myself to involve myself wherever I could. I did a lot of extracurricular things. I pushed myself into as many things as I could, into cheerleading, into soccer. In college, I even did a sorority, and looking back, these things were so not me, and I literally still have nightmares about those things. They were so detrimental to my development. But I pushed myself because the people around me started to see my aloneness as a sign of there being something wrong. And as a result, I started to see it that way too. When I was younger, I didn't feel lonely. I saw my alone time as a virtue, as a really important part of my functioning. I needed it, and I still need it now. As I got older, it became really disentangled with the feeling of loneliness. And that's partially because I've experienced loneliness. Yes, that's a very real thing. And that is a desire or a feeling of needing connection with other humans. It's a feeling of unmet need for connection, in my opinion, in my experience. That's what it feels like. It feels like this unsatisfied need for human connection. That is what loneliness feels like for me. And when I was younger, my aloneness did not feel that way. It didn't come with loneliness. As I got older, it started to. And I think that's because I started comparing myself to other people. Plus, I genuinely did feel a stronger need for connection. And it's really hard to disentangle how much of that need was truly innate, truly coming from within, versus coming from people projecting onto me that because I was alone, it meant I should be lonely. I started to feel like being alone could not exist without being lonely. And I became very detached from myself. I became very sure that my aloneness was a symptom or a sign of there being a problem or something wrong, a sign of depression, a sign of social exclusion. I couldn't spend time with myself without feeling the absence of people. And this was very different for me. This was not how I was as a child. This was not characteristic of me to feel such a strong need for other people to just observe me or be around me. I felt as though I didn't exist unless I was in the presence of another person. And now the other tricky part is where masking comes into play here, because I think part of this shift happened because of masking. And this shift happened probably somewhere in like high school or college, I think. I started to feel as though I was so distanced from my sense of self because I had been masking so heavily that I felt I only existed when I was masking. I felt as though I was a mirror for other people, and when I had nobody to mirror, like I was alone, I had no personality. And so I felt really nullified when I was not in the presence of another person because I wasn't mirroring anybody. And so I was essentially nothing, nobody. I only felt I existed when I had somebody to mirror. And this contributed to the loneliness that I was feeling massively. And now in recent time, it's taken a very long time to heal this part of myself. Very, very many years have gone into healing this experience of realizing that I do need a lot of alone time, and my aloneness is not the same thing as loneliness. And my aloneness is not a sign or a symptom of a problem. It is a part of my functioning, and it is a really important part of who I am. I'm a very deep person. I'm a very emotional person. I am a big daydreamer. I believe a lot in manifestation. I have a lot of my best thoughts when I'm alone. A lot of the content for these episodes, for my reels, come from when I'm alone. I feel most of my emotions when I'm alone. I figure things out. I work through my life problems. I make sense of things. I become more open-minded from being able to think through things alone. I recharge through being alone. I connect with myself being alone. I am extremely introverted. And these are parts of me, massive parts of me, parts that cannot and should not have ever been ignored or banished. My need for aloneness is me wanting to connect with myself. That is not the same thing as loneliness. I am not lonely when I'm alone because I'm with myself, and that's what was missing. That's why I felt lonely before, because I wasn't with myself. I had abandoned myself all of those years. And now that I'm here again, that is what cured the loneliness. And I don't want to dismiss anybody who's listening to this and feels they are lonely, because loneliness is a very real thing, and just one's own presence is not always enough to cure that. Sometimes your loneliness is a true unmet, unsatisfied need for human connection with other people, and that is very real, that is very valid, and that is something that I do experience, but not in the same way that I did when I was really heavily masking and when I had been subject to the external projections of other people's thoughts about my aloneness. Do I still get lonely at times? I do. It's more rare, and it's also now not always tied to being alone. I often feel the loneliest when I am with other people these days. And I feel the most here and the most myself, the most nurtured, cared for, loved when I'm alone. And that's how I felt when I was a kid. And I'm so glad that I've been able to reach that point again and reconnect with that and re-understand what being alone is and means for me, and how it's not the same thing as loneliness. They don't always go together. They can go together. I tend to feel the loneliest when I'm around lots of other people, because that is when I feel the most unable to be myself often. It's something that I'm still working on. But I'm really glad that I've been able to re-understand and recontextualize my need for alone time and my love for being alone and my strength and the importance in being alone for myself, realizing how vital it is to my functioning and to my mind and to manifestation for myself and to my life. It's such an important thing for me, and re-understanding it and healing my relationship with myself has helped a lot in this process of becoming comfortable with being alone again. Realizing that it's not a signifier of me not performing well socially. It's not a signifier of me being defective in any way. And being alone doesn't necessarily mean that I'm lonely. And that is something that so many people misunderstood about me, and their misunderstandings made me misunderstand myself. So this episode is meant to say that being alone doesn't always mean that you're lonely. And if you are lonely, that's valid. But as an autistic person, you are allowed to find your aloneness healing, and you are allowed to need to be alone. It is okay, and it is understandable, and it is important, and feeling at peace with it has helped me a lot to reconnect with myself. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, remember, autistic adults exist. We deserve awareness, support, community, and acceptance, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.